It's the 8th of the 4th, 2025, and it's the Bahrain race weekend. But you know, I want to dissect and diatribe for what we saw last race weekend at the Japanese Grand Prix. Because in the aftermath, you know, as you're post-morteming and trying to understand the extent of what happened, I think there are a couple plot lines that not too many people that I see and follow have pulled at with a view to understand what this means as an inflection point potentially for the 2025 season. Here's where I'm as far as Lando Norris to set the table as far as context. Lando Norris is a brilliant driver, a generational one, some may say. Speed isn't something he lacks, but there are multitudinous travails as far as his arsenal as an F1 peddler, not least mental fortitude, not least attention span, not least of which is his ability to multitask and manage for changeable circumstances that so present themselves so frequently in an F1 race. As your Exhibit A, please see Qatar Grand Prix last year when Max Verstappen went through the yellows. He had one bite at that cherry. Lando Norris had two. Max Verstappen saw the yellows and responded accordingly, lifting, feathering the throttle with a view to signal to the FIA that he knows and is aware therefore of the impending danger. Lando Norris, in stark contrast, failed to do so, as near as makes no difference as your Exhibit B. Please see every single time Lando Norris dropped it on pole last year. Defensive posture, lack thereof, failing to consolidate for the advantage that is P1. You hear Frederick Vasseur saying that this is the qualifying championship. That speaks to exactly how important it is in this rule and reg spec, this ground effect era, how important it is to drop it on pole, how it's important that these drivers can weaponise for that. Lando Norris, though, I say all that to say, is an absolutely brilliant peddler if you're measuring pace in absolute terms. However, Lando strikes me as the naughty boy, the cheeky boy at secondary school that likes to write checks that his ass cannot cash. Here's what I mean as far as Lando Norris's chat. You'll recall many moons ago, he said to Lewis Hamilton, "You had the fastest car 7 years ago. All that time, you had your time. Now it's ours." Implying, therefore, that if you have the fastest machine, that your ability to weaponise for that and win races should be open and shut case, Johnson. It should be easy for you. Well, how about now, Lando Norris? Because the word on the F1 curb is that you are driving the quickest car in that MCL 39 to the tune of 3 or 4 tenths. Yeah, and still, Maximilian Verstappen as a fire-breathing dragon is 1 point adrift of your tally in the Drivers' Championship. What does that mean, therefore, Lando? And if you don't believe me, you only need to pay attention to what Max Verstappen said after the Japanese Grand Prix to Viaplay. He said starting on pole was the most important thing during the weekend. McLaren, I think, was faster, but they couldn't get into the DRS to make a move. When I came to the Japanese Grand Prix, Max Verstappen says, quote, "I didn't expect to win here at all. After Friday, not at all." He continues, when asked for his reaction for the victory and whether the win was entirely down to the driver, Max Verstappen responded lightheartedly, quote, "I'm very happy with what I'm doing. I don't even want to think about it. If I'd been in that other car, that McLaren, then you wouldn't have seen me. You wouldn't have seen which way I went." Ergo, Max Verstappen is saying that Lando Norris had the whip hand. He was in the quickest car at Japan. And again, it's the natural habitat of the MCL 39 though. Medium to high speed turns, spoon, Degners, 130R, 200R. Of course, you would expect the papaya coloured car, therefore, to be the market lead. Lando and Oscar, therefore, should have been 1 and 2 as far as qualifying. They should have ended the race in the same positions. What are you talking about, therefore, Lando? Stop writing with your mouth tricks that your ass cannot cash. You're making life more difficult for yourself, sir. we contended, we put forth the following supposition on the back of the 2024 season. There were a couple of things that you needed to tweak for Lando. Surely by saying some of these things, you're only making life more difficult. As your exhibit B, as far as Lando Norris's quotables that he's not been able to deliver upon. You'll recall a couple of weeks ago, George Russell declared McLaren have the quickest car, that they could win every Grand Prix in the season that is 2025, that its advantage over the rest of the field is greater than Red Bull's ever was. Please see RB19, one of the most dominant machines in F1 history. Over to you, Lando. He said, quote, people love saying that, but our advantage lies in the fact that, quote, we are the only team who has two good drivers at the minute. That's the big difference. What is he talking about, chat? You can't even dig yourself a bigger verbal hole if you wanted. And again, the challenge for Lando Norris in 2025 was put out this way. What he needed to cessate for, minimise for, is the expectation pressure doom loop. You know, the one that Nico Rosberg told Lando Norris that he would need to avoid. And again, nobody better to speak on this circumstance than the one that they call Nico Rosberg, one-time champion 2016. He was the one who was able to overcome a natural talent deficit in Lewis Hamilton by focusing, by being resilient, by doubling down on determination, by taking off the paint off of his helmet, by sacking off his favourite exercise in cycling with a view to save weight on his legs. There's no better example of determination and the extent of commitment with a view to overcome a natural talent deficit. Surely then, Lando Norris, this is the restaurant from which you need to dine. You need to take a leaf out of Nico Rosberg's book, but yet and still we hear these quotes. What is he talking about? That the big difference is in a teammate. That's no sell that, surely, Lando Norris. If again you want us to sate for the expectation, pressure, doom loop. Christian Horner, he speaks to this. He said that he addressed Lando Norris's quotes verbatim almost. He said at the Japanese Grand Prix, I guess the problem that McLaren have in that they have two drivers who are free to fight for the drivers' championship. Now, as far as driver hierarchy, of course, you've got to make a decision if indeed you want to win yourself a championship of the drivers' variety. If past this prologue, Exhibit A, you only need to look at 1989. If that had been a competitive championship and McLaren didn't have the whip hand then, that might have opened the door to another driver winning the drivers. How about 2007? Sir Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso spent the whole season fighting, allowing Kimi Raikkonen to sneak in stage left. Christian Horner continues, and I quote, the difficulty that McLaren have is that they've made a bet where they're going to let them race. So that's the compromise. That's the inevitability that comes with. Here's what Christian Horner means in substance. If you take a look at the Japanese Grand Prix, a couple things happened. You can't criticise McLaren necessarily for pitting Oscar Piastri first, because George Russell had pitted and the undercut was real here. Had they not pitted Oscar Piastri when they did, George Russell would have pulled off the undercut on one OJ Piastri. As far as Lando Norris is concerned, they pitted him at the right time, but then in the latter stages of the final stint, surely you leverage the pincer move that is having two quick drivers in the quickest car. Let OJ Piastri past. Let's see what damage he can take out of Max Verstappen, how he could potentially expedite for the rate at which Max Verstappen's tyres were falling off. Leverage the strength in numbers, surely, McLaren. This isn't calculus, nor is it God tier F1 thinking. This is counting, not even algebra. Basics, common sense, though some say in F1 is not too common. Stella, Zach Brown need to get themselves together and understand in real time whether they're prepared to pay the tax that's requisite, necessary even, to win themselves a championship of the driver's variety. So too Lando Norris. I feel like we're having this same conversation. Rewind back to 2024. We made a gazillion of these videos. There are things requisite that are necessary to win a championship that Lando Norris will need to now. I think Max himself has to discover how good he is. Oh my gosh, I don't think we've seen his peak either, Safak. I think you're on onto something there. But as far as Lando's concerned, that's a very dangerous proposition, though. If Max Verstappen is still improving, then Lando Norris doesn't just need to raise his game to here. He needs to raise his game to here. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a problem as well. Very low level hanging fruit. To sate for the expectation, pressure, doom loop, Lando. Have a word with your boy Nico Rosberg and take from his counsel. Get yourself to a sports psychologist so you can understand and solve for the circumstance, the aspect that is challenging for the 2025 Drivers' Championship in real time. Because lest you do that, slaying for a fire-breathing dragon in Maximilian Verstappen in his pomp, for some say soon to be 5-time champion, will be an exercise in futility. Oh, the humanity.